Inside this unassuming brown box, I have a small home server. We have the ZimaBoard 2, which one of the interesting pieces is the box is actually part of the case. We'll get to that in a little bit. The computer itself is encased in aluminum here, so it can dissipate heat fairly effectively. You do still need some sort of a fan so that you don't overheat it, but if you had a little bit of airflow going over top of it, I think you could probably get away with a mostly passive cooling setup. We've got an accessories box though too. Inside the accessories box, there is a bunch of adapters for your different power regions. We have our wall wart, which does, I believe, 12 volt, 5 amps, so 60 watts. Our little cooling fan that I talked about before, a couple of tiny screwdrivers that I probably won't use, and the SATA Y cable to plug in some drives to the board on the back side here. What this thing is it is what they call an SBC, or a single board computer with a decent amount of I/O on it. We have a PCI Express slot on the end here, which really is a differentiator for this type of device. You don't normally have something you can just plug regular cards into. Normally you need to get some sort of ribbon cable or adapter or hat. Then you might have the option to, but they've got it kind of built right in here. On the other side, we have our SATA data ports here, as well as a plug in the middle here for power on those SATA drives. I'm a little disappointed that it's not an easier standard that you'd be able to just go and find a SATA adapter for, but what they do include in the box does work pretty well. It's just if you lose that cable, you might have a hard time finding a way to power the drives. It's not impossible. They do have the replacement cables up on their site, and they're reasonably priced. They're $4. On the last side, we have two 2.5 gigabit Ethernet jacks, as well as two USB 3.1 ports. These are USB-A, so they're going to be limited to 10 gigabits per second. We've got a mini display port on the edge here as well that gives you the capability of hooking up a monitor at a full 4K 60. And finally, our barrel jack, where we can hook up our 60 watt power adapter. Now that we've done the outside tour, let's crack this thing open and see what it looks like on the inside. The screws are Torx, which they did give you the screwdrivers for. I just happen to prefer using our precision kit. I didn't actually notice until I was taking it off that it had the little hole here for CMOS reset, which kind of comes onto the board right there. Oh, I did find one more screw. One more screw right at the very bottom here, right underneath where the CMOS battery was. So this was like that. There we go. Thermal paste for everything. Normally for a lot of these like smaller chips on the side, you just have a thermal pad kind of going over top of everything. They used a ton of thermal paste though. Holy smokes, look at that. Can you see that? With like the peaks? There's just as much on this side too. Put it on our main processor here. I believe these two are memory packages. That's going to be some sort of controller down here. And then this looks like it's power delivery. Well, that was cool. But let's put it back together. One of the things that is kind of nice about this and differentiates it from something like a Raspberry Pi is you have an x86 processor inside. It's an Intel N150, and that gives you the option to install a lot of the programs and apps that you'd be familiar with on the desktop. You could install Windows on this if you wanted to. When you fire it up for the first time from the manufacturer though, they do have their own OS that they've put together called ZimaOS. This is a Linux-based operating system where they've put things together in such a way that you can get a couple drives running in RAID, use it as a NAS. We'll take a look at what it looks like in just a bit here. Getting back to the box, you can see that the lid has some cutouts in it and then a dotted line right here, so that we can go ahead and make a small stand for our new little computer. You hook the bottom fin of their heatsink just in there like that, and they've positioned things in such a way that you can stick a couple of 2.5-inch drives right there. And this would be a case. For us though, we actually ordered the NAS kit for home server and personal cloud, which comes with some other goodies. The first and kind of most impactful piece, I would say, is this extra cage here. We've got a bracket here, which Its use will become more apparent in a bit. A PCI Express riser, and this nice 2-bay open air enclosure for some 3.5-inch drives. We're going to take the screws out of the bottom of this, and then use the supplied screws to mount the board right on top like that. It's really nice when you can lay everything down and you don't have to awkwardly try and hold the thing together while putting the first screw in. This is a little bit awkward where you have a screwdriver at an angle kind of going past the foot here.
Would the mini screwdriver that they give you fit in that?
Nope. We've got that guy together there. Let's figure out this bracket now. So you know how I was talking about things that lay nice and flat when you're trying to put it all together? This is not one of those things now. So that guy goes in there. This comes all the way around. I'm confused again. I'd expect this to come over, and then this. Oh, does this sit this way? Okay. So I had the PCB on the wrong side. After fighting with this for a little bit, I do have it together in the way that they expect it to be, but you need to use the screws from your drives to mount this expansion card bracket in place. Otherwise, it just kind of floats away there. It does have some feet on the bottom, and these feet are magnetic as well, which if you're putting this on a surface that is magnetic, it will hold things in place a little bit better. But until I get some drives in there, this is just kind of floating around. So let's fix that. I do have just a couple of Seagate 2 terabyte SATA drives. We'll use these as our temporary setup for when we're kind of poking around in the OS. Even just having the one screw in place, you can see how this is pretty solid already. If you have it just sitting there, we do have 2 more mounting points that we're gonna stick some screws in though. There we go. Now it's nice and solid. The next piece that came with this kit is a little expansion card that sits off of this bracket that lets us plug in a couple of NVMe drives. The expansion card's pretty simple. All it does is it takes your PCI Express interface here and changes that into some M.2 slots. It also comes with a low profile bracket and some screws for your NVMe and a couple of screws to hold down the bracket itself. It is PCIe 3x4. PCIe 3 drives are a bit dated at this point. Most modern drives will be restricted by how fast this guy can go. One thing I am going to nitpick on a little bit is it comes pre-installed with the full-size bracket when the expansion card bracket that they have on the side of the kit is for a low-profile one. So they could have had that pre-installed for you, but it's a minor detail. It is kind of nice that they include the full-size bracket in case you wanted to throw this into a full-size computer. Now, before I throw this onto the expansion card bracket, I am going to install my drives first. This is going to be almost as stacked as you can get this type of thing in terms of pieces connected. For our NVMe drives, I've got a couple of Western Digital Blue, just 1 terabyte, pretty basic. There we go, 2 drives installed. And this guy can just go here and ka-chunk. As I was going to put this together, I noticed that the expansion card bracket has a hole there for a screw, but there's no threading there. I don't know if we're just missing a piece that's supposed to be on the other side or if that's the way it's meant to be. For right now, that's okay, but it's something that I'd probably wanted a little bit more secure than this. We've got the cooling fan here, and let me pull this guy back out so that I can show. I assumed that there was a nice place for this plug to go into, just on the outside, which there is this little indent right here. But as you can see, this does not fit in. I understand what they're doing here. The idea is you take the bottom off, you stick this guy in, and then you have just the cable coming out of the side. But finding that out now, once everything's assembled, means I've got to take it all apart again.
Yeah, maybe I don't want to be here that long. Realistically, this fan, it can't be adding a lot to the equation.
No. So with a fan like that, you're not getting a lot of air movement, but you don't need much air movement over top of these fins to actually get a good amount of extra heat dissipation off of there, because convection is very weak in terms of pulling that away.
I have a plan. I am just going to turn down the ambient temperature in the room 2 degrees.
You've probably heard of a VPN before, like the one we prefer to use, Private Internet Access. But what can they really do for you? A VPN can be used to hide and mask the location of your internet connection, to conceal your browsing from your ISP and other third parties. This means you can access content from all around the world, as well as your country's content when traveling. So go check it out at piavpn.com/shortcircuit, or by using our link in the description for a special exclusive deal with a risk-free 30-day money-back guarantee.
For our test run here, we're gonna be fine without the fan, so we're gonna leave it off. But if you're building one of these on your own, just remember before you stick everything together, you're gonna wanna pull the casing off, plug this guy in here, and then it mounts just on that screw right there. I need to hook up our SATA drives on the outside. Our kit helpfully included a mini DisplayPort to HDMI cable. Mini DisplayPort isn't super uncommon, but it's not the type of thing that the average person will have laying around their house. Now, I'm not actually expecting much from this side here, but I'm just kind of interested what it looks like. Most of the time you administer these guys out of a kind of web GUI. Things like TrueNAS or Proxmox or most of the server-y type operating systems, you don't actually do too much on the console itself. You'll end up going to it remotely. The text is really small. It's pretty typical to see this on a 4K monitor when you've got a command line only environment, unless you do some extra work to scale it. But just to give you an idea, that's what the landing page looks like. Note, SSH service is disabled by default. Please enable it through Web UI by accessing the above address. That is kind of nice that it's not just turned on by default. If you don't know what SSH is, it's a way to get into your system remotely. And if you don't know what you're doing in terms of security and passwords and all that sort of stuff, it's very easy to leave that as an open door to your machine. I'm going to use our laptop here to get to the web interface, and I'll make sure that there's some screen cap for you guys to follow along with. Okay, so starting off here, I've got a Welcome to ZimaBoard 2. There is an Accept Privacy Policy checkbox in the bottom corner that is almost invisible, and it won't let you go next until you click it. Introducing ZimaOS. Combine hard drives, manage assets and data, access anytime, anywhere, merge own apps, start from files, start from App Store. Let's try start from files and see where that gets us. So Zima client mounted as local disk. And it's got a storage here for ZimaOS HD. Yeah, no, ZimaOS HD is just your internal eMMC. So these guys come in two different configurations. One of them has 32 gigs of eMMC, the other has 64 gigs of eMMC. As you might know already, eMMC is not the fastest storage in the world, so you're probably not going to be wanting to use that for most of the things that you set up. You're going to want to keep that on drives that you have separately, either the NVMe drives or the hard drives that you set up. So now we're met with a dashboard that looks a little bit more like what I was actually looking for. In terms of the front and center here, it says found new device, and it's got 4 items. Let's walk through that really quick, see what the setup process is like. It says that we've got 4 new disks, which, yes, we do. We've got our 2 hard drives and our 2 NVMe drives. We want to use them combined. I'm kind of curious as to what it's going to let us do, because these are so mixed in terms of what they are. By default, we get 2 different options. We get RAID 5, which is a minimum of 3 disks, and you have 1 parity. So that means that you can lose any 1 disk in your array there, and your array will keep going fine. You lose 2 disks and everything's gone. Or we have a RAID 1 option, which they label as safe. RAID 1 is a simple mirror where you've got the exact same information on both drives. And again, if you lose 1 drive, you can keep going. Obviously, if you lose 2, your mirror is completely gone. We're just gonna make a RAID 1 and select our 2 2TB drives so that we have 2 terabytes of space across that RAID 1. Gotta give it a name, RAID 1, volume, and it gives you the warning saying that when you're creating a RAID array, it's going to initialize the disks and all of the files will be deleted. That is important to know when you're setting up new storage volumes, that you will typically be wiping those drives. Our RAID volume is finished being made, and I'm gonna go and set up a share really quick. Now, if I go into my shared section, I can see that there are the 2 shares for the root drives. There's the original ZimaOS HD, my RAID volume that I created, and this new share. To get to the share, inside here, you can click on the 3 dots and hit Manage Share, and it actually gives you a super handy copy and paste that you can just go throw into Explorer, and we're there. New share. Let's take a look at what other apps this thing can run. Clicking on the App Store, there's a bunch of featured apps here, all sorts of things inside the App Store here. So let's just grab something like Jellyfin, hit install, and see what happens. And we have Jellyfin as a new app, and we're greeted with the welcome to Jellyfin. That's pretty awesome. It was 1 click to get Jellyfin up and running. All that being said, I did mention this before, but I feel it's worth mentioning again. You're not locked into ZimaOS. You can run any typical x86 or 64-bit software that you would run on your desktop. All in all, it feels like a pretty nifty little package. But how much does it cost? The 832 configuration of just the board is $339 US, whereas the 1664 configuration is $399. If you want the full kit with the drive bay adapters, the PCI Express riser, and this little adapter here for add-in cards, the cloud kit for the 832 configuration is $469. The 1664 configuration is $529. That being said, we did some poking around on their website, and they have all of these extra pieces for sale individually as well. The 2-bay rack, for example, is only $30 US. If you have just little bits and pieces that you want to put together, you may not actually need to get the full kit, and you'll be able to save a little bit of money along the way. Thanks for tuning in to us taking a look at the ZimaBoard 2 here. If you want to check out some other kind of interesting computer hardware, I did a short circuit on the colorful X870E Vulcan motherboard recently. You should go check that one out. It's a bit of an interesting one.